We hope that all of you had a phenomenal Thanksgiving weekend, for we have lots to be thankful for. But unfortunately, here in the Commonwealth of Virginia, we had yet another mass shooting. This is our special report, hashtag Chesapeake Strong, where we'll talk about the issues surrounding mass shootings and also remember those that lost their lives in the massacre. It's Stay the Water. I'm your host, Dr. Claville. Stay tuned in just a moment. Welcome back. It's Stay the Water. I'm your host, Dr. Claville. Once again, we'd like to thank all of you for joining us, taking time out of your day to come with us and be with us as we have yet another conversation about movers and shakers and policymakers and people in the community doing great things, and to talk about the issues of today. As I said before, we hope that all of you had a phenomenal Thanksgiving, and we hope that you, of course, as I stated in our last show, we have a lot to be thankful for. And I hope you enjoyed your time with your families, with your loved ones, with your friends, with your colleagues. And I hope you made new friends. I hope you caught up with old friends, because this is truly a time that we can sit back and just be thankful for everything that's going on in our lives and that God has helped us and spared us. And the fact that you're listening to me today tells us that, yes, you woke up this morning and God gave you health and strength to do just that. But before I move on, I want to give a shout out, of course, to all of the great listeners, the great alumni that we have, the greatest alumni in the world, the Spartan Nation. Without you, we couldn't do what we do. As we broadcast live from the greatest campus, the largest HBCU in the Commonwealth, Norfolk State University, home of the Spartan Nation, from WNSB, Hot 91, the soul of VA. Also to our producer, who's always keeping us right and tight, Marvin Folks, also known as DJ Scanless, that you can hear every day, Monday through Friday, from 2 to 6 p.m. here on the Wheels of Steel on WNSB, and also on Saturday, and yes, on Sunday, the hardest working man in radio. But, you know, as we have this season to be thankful, unfortunately, we had yet another mass shooting in our Commonwealth. And not just in our Commonwealth, but next door to the great city of Norfolk in our neighboring city of Chesapeake. Once again, we have someone that decided to take the law in their own hands and do something horrendous and take the lives of other people that for no other reason than to take their lives. It's something that's happening over and over and over again, something that we're seeing on the news every single day. It's something that we're scratching our heads and saying, what is the solution? But we also have to scratch our heads and ask ourselves, what is the problem? Because before we can find a solution, we've got to identify what the problem is. You know, but to help break this down for us, we've got my good friend and, of course, one of Norfolk State's very own favorite sons, and definitely a fighter for this area, this community, and our entire Commonwealth. And that's to help us break this down. That's none other than Delegate Cliff Hayes. Delegate Hayes, thank you again for joining us here on Stay the Water.
Thank you so much, Dr. Claville, and certainly a pleasure indeed to be able to be with you once again on the State of the Water on the Hot 91.1 WNSB. Behold the green and gold. We're just excited about being here on this morning. Certainly the topic that we have is something that is weighty, it's heavy, but it's necessary. So we're hopeful that folks from all perspectives, all sides of issues realize that we need to come together to solve this issue that we face today.
Absolutely. You know, CNN reported 6 victims shot and killed in a Virginia Walmart, including a 16-year-old boy. in your city, in Chesapeake, where you represent part of that community in the state legislature. Brother Hayes, you were featured on CNN, and we don't have, of course, for those of you that are listening, go to that clips, go to CNN, and just look under that special tag that they have for this unfortunate incident, and you'll see Delegate Cliff Hayes' interview, and it was a riveting interview. And when I saw it, you talked about a lot of things. First of all, before we get into the problem and the solution, because you addressed something that I really want to delve into, identifying what the problem is and then talk about solutions. But before we get into that, I just want to get your thoughts and give you an opportunity to talk to our audience about, your feelings toward, this whole thing, because you were on the scene, giving the interview, you were there after it all happened. What are your thoughts?
Well, Dr. Claville, first off, thank you again for this opportunity to discuss with the listening audience this whole matter, because that's exactly what we all need to do. We need to begin discussing not only the problems that we face, but continue the conversations about addressing the issues and dealing with the issues and solving some of the problems that we face. We didn't get here overnight, and all of a sudden someone turned off the light switch, and here we have these horrendous problems. It's been a gradual eroding, if you will, from, I would say, multiple perspectives. And until we come together and sit down in a room and realize that the perspectives that we face are not mutually exclusive, and in other words, oftentimes we hear that the community needs to stand up and needs to deal with issues and challenges, and someone will blame the community. Then someone will yell across and say, we need gun control. And then someone will stand up and say, it's a matter of mental health. But the truth is, all of these matters overlay the problem that we face in terms of violence. Violence intervention is going to, I believe, be a major crux in our solution. And so we have to be more proactive at what we do in the communities to try to deal with this violence on multiple levels, all three of those levels, not blaming one or the other, but realizing that all of it is a part of the problem. And as leaders, it's important for us to sit down and do what's right, the correct thing to address these problems. I do believe it was Dr. King that says, oftentimes, cowardice will show up, and it will have you try to make the decision that is safe. And if not that, then comes along situations of vanity to try to see what's the popular thing to do. But then there's a time when we can't care about what's safe, what's politically correct, or what's popular. We have to address the issues knowing what the answers are, and to let our conscience be our guide. And so in this moment, we've got to be willing to sit down and address what we know are the right things to do.
Absolutely. The city of Chesapeake, as CNN reported, is known as the city that cares. And now more than ever, it's a city that definitely needs all the care, all the kindness, and all the support that it can handle. This is Stay the Water. I'm your host, Dr. Claville. You're joining us for a special report on hashtag Chesapeake Strong. With us, we have my good friend, one of Norfolk State's favorite sons and state delegate for parts of Chesapeake, Delegate Cliff Hayes. And we're talking about the tragedy, the mass shooting that happened right before the Thanksgiving day here in Chesapeake, Virginia, right next door here to Norfolk. So Chesapeake is part of the greater Southampton Roads, Tidewater area. It's a city, of course. Mayor Ward was one that really saw the vision of that city, right? And all that it could be, and is known as one of the safest cities, in the country. But on this unfortunate day, it became known not as a safe city, but as a city that has experienced what so many cities are experiencing. Just 170 miles, north of Chesapeake, we had a young man that also took matters into his own hands and killed several of his former teammates at the University of Virginia. We also have in several states to our west someone else that went into a club and took lives of many people there in the state of Colorado. Delegate Hayes, I mentioned earlier that this is happening more and more and more. It's just not, it's happening in places that we thought were safe, quote unquote safe, places that we thought that we'll never see this type of thing. But you also talked about on CNN, it's just not happening in these large mass shootings, but people getting shot every day. Tell us a little bit about some of you mentioned some of the personal losses that you've had, and I think a lot of this falls, off the radar because it happens so much. Can you tell us a little bit about, what's been going on?
Yeah, Dr. Claville, our family has had the unfortunate experience of having, within a month, 3 young black males shot, 2 of which were murdered, killed. And those shootings were weeks apart, obviously, if it all happened within a month. And so 2 brothers, 1 week, and then the next week another one, killed by handgun violence. And then a cousin who is rather introverted, wouldn't raise his voice to anybody, wouldn't kill a fly. And yet he can just go for a walk, just a walk. He's just going for a walk. And someone rides by and begins to unload their weapon and shoot him. Didn't know him. They're just out joyriding and joy shooting and don't even care who's impacted. What in the world is going on? We live in a country where we can find ourselves on the top 65 wealthiest nations in the world. And yet, according to the American Medical Association, you can find that handgun violence puts us number 8 on that list of where these things are more likely to happen. You compare the European Union, you will see that the United States, in comparison to the European Union, is some 22 times more likely to experience something like this. If you compare us to Australia, you will find that we are some 23% more likely to have something like this to happen. If you compare us to France, it's some 12% more likely to happen here. And then when you just look north of where we are in Canada, I read somewhere that unfortunately they have had 11 mass shootings. 11. But guess what the difference is?
What's that?
That 11 mass shootings have been over time, period. In history, in their existence, they've had 11.
Wow.
Why is it that we're having 11 a week Somebody believes, and again, I'm not pointing to one perspective, but I am going to point them all out, and that is the proliferation of guns and handguns so available and on everybody's person makes it easier for individuals to respond to situations, for that to be their first go-to.
Absolutely.
To solving issues.
You mentioned a very good point about mass shootings across the world and how the U.S. experiences more than our fair share, whereas just our neighbors to the north, you said, in from recording these mass shootings, they've experienced 11 over the course of time. So let me give this statistic here. According to the Gun Violence Archive, and this is also reported, CNN report, both, the nonprofit, it's a nonprofit, they define mass shootings in those in which 4 or more people are actually shot, not including the assailant, right? Because then that's a designation as a murder, suicide, so that's another designation. But where 4 or more people are shot. Now, in the past year, in this year alone, and this year is not over with, by the way, okay, we still have about 40 days left. But according to the Gun Violence Archive, the U.S. has suffered more than 4 more people have been shot, more than 600 mass shootings.
Lord have mercy.
Over 600. So when you talk about the proliferation of guns, now we know that one of the biggest lobbies, is the NRA. Of course, they've gone through some issues with their leadership, the organization, and so forth. But we know that they're one of the main organizations that lobby for the protection of the Second Amendment and therefore a person being able to arm themselves, defend themselves, and the like. But is there, when we see the Second Amendment and its relevance in today's society and the type of guns and weapons, and I'll just say weapons, right? Because guns are different from rifles, all right? Rifles are different from assault rifles. And, so you have different types of mechanisms in order to, unfortunately, kill people. But in today's society, should there be more of a deep dive or a check and balance, do you think, in the type of weapons that the average citizen is able to secure?
Well, I can tell you, debating the issue, and certainly we've made significant gains over the past, I would say, 2020, when we were able to pass significant gun violence prevention measures in the Virginia General Assembly. But as you know, what comes along with that ends up being some negotiation. So we always believe in pushing for what we know ought to happen. And sometimes those laws don't make it across the finish line as they started. And so you end up with some bills that have been compromised that pass. So the truth is there's still work to be done in that regard when it comes to mental health and mental health concerns and challenges that we face. Thank God the society has kind of come to a place where I feel that the stigma that's associated with it has been watered down, dampened down, and so people are beginning to understand that it's something that we all need to address. So I'm happy that we're there. However, that has only been a recent thing, and so how do we make up for, the over 400 years of mental anguish and trauma that people are facing because of violence? So we got a whole lot of work to do, and we'll continue to have a whole lot of work to do. And then, of course, violence intervention in our communities to make sure that we provide resources, people, help, moral fabric and fiber in our communities and to be courageous about it. And eventually, we'll begin to turn the tide and see change. But standing and pointing fingers at one of those variables only, as though they're mutually exclusive, will not get us there.
Absolutely.
And being cowardice or trying to be politically correct or trying to see, lick your finger, see which way the wind is blowing, to get in and address issues based on what's popular, is not going to get us there. It's going to take some conscious-driven, courageous action in order for us to get there.
Absolutely. Courage, being able to speak truth to power, but also to bring everybody to the table to bring a solution to these important issues to solve this problem that we have in our country and these mass shootings.
Can I just say something,
Absolutely.
Dr. Claville, too?
Absolutely.
Just leaving church service this morning, and as the listening audience knows that I bleed green and gold.
That's right.
They also know that my family is something that I'm willing to go to war over, and that includes my spiritual family. And so when folks make comments and stuff about leaders in our community, including my bishop, just know that we're doing everything we can to protect our bishop. And so when folks make foolish comments about why isn't he doing this or why isn't he doing that, just know there's a tremendous amount of work that goes into what the Mount pushes out in the community and what, under the direction of Bishop Kim and Elder Valerie Brown,
Mm-hmm.
and the positivity that they bring to this community with resources, help, spiritual guidance, leadership, etc. And so it's always somebody who steps out there and tries to rain on the parade, if you will. And so just know that folks that want to be naysayers and be Monday morning quarterbacks, and just know we have work to do and we're going to get the work done.
Absolutely. Listen.
That goes for those in the community who are standing on the sidelines, as my grandmama used to say, bumping their gums, doing a whole lot of talking and no action.
I haven't heard that terminology.
We're going to do the work, and including from a legislative perspective and the proliferation of guns, we're going to act. We're going to get that done. And then when it comes to this mental health issue, strong folks,
yes, sir,
understand that we all can be weak at some point.
That's right.
At some moment. And so ignorance is not going to play a part in the development of the solutions that we're going to come up with.
You know, the old adage is, if they ain't talking about you, then you ain't doing nothing. So obviously, if there's a lot of talk going on, obviously the Mount is moving. And, of course, we know the work that Bishop Brown and the Mount does in the community and the service that's provided to Norfolk State University. So, listen, we wish you nothing but Godspeed and the very best, because we know our community is much better because we have champions like you, of course, your church family, and others that are fighting, for our communities. Before we go, I just want you to stay online with me as I call their names. And again, I know we talked about the issues here, but I want to make sure that we call their names, the ones that were deceased, and pray for those families. The families of Lorenzo Gamble, Brian Pendleton, Kelly Powell, Randall Blevins, Tanika Johnson, and of course the minor, 16-year-old minor that was also killed. This has been a special report here on Stay the Water. Hashtag Chesapeake Strong. Continue to pray for the city of Chesapeake. Continue to pray for those families. And also pray for the family of the shooter. Because at the end of the day, we are all God's children. And no matter what happens in this world, we are to show the spirit of Christ. Once again, go forth, be great, and God bless you in all that you do. Delegate Hayes, my friend, thank you so much for joining us. We'll see everyone next week.
All right. Be blessed, brother.